It's running itself!
Something's coming.
We are talking From Beyond from 1986. This is directed by Stuart Gordon and is adapted from a short story from H.P. Lovecraft. It's got a good cast of recognisable horror actors, including Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton and Ken Foree. Now the story is initially about this scientist played by Jeffrey Combs, and he's with his partner have built this machine called the Resonator, which is able to enlarge the pineal gland in your brain to enable you to experience effectively looking into a different dimension, but they can kind of see you back, whatever's in there. And Jeffrey Combs' partner is seemingly killed by this, and he's arrested. And he goes into the care of Barbara Crampton's doctor, along with a cop, played by Ken Foree, go to try and find out what has happened and recreate the experiment. And of course, this leads to things from beyond, shall I say, coming into our world, wanting to influence it and maybe take over it. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. So first of all, what works in this movie's favour? A killer cast. Yes, a recognisable smorgasbord of faces. Ted Sorrell as well in this. You've got a movie famous for one particular scene in that Barbara Crampton dresses up in S&M gear. So as well as kind of enlarging your pineal gland in your brain, it also kind of spikes your sexual desires, and thus we see a scene with Barbara Crampton in S&M gear, which is kind of, I think, one of the more fondly remembered scenes from this this movie. So you know, there's that. I think the standout here is probably the VFX, though, the practical VFX. A lot of people compare this to The Thing in regards to, you know, monster effects and stuff like that, and they are very grotesque and gooey and over the top. I wouldn't say they are comparable to The Thing, if you want my opinion, but nonetheless, I do think they are very impressive. Considering this is a movie produced by Empire Pictures in 1986, you know, it's an impressive feat. I think the budget was around $2.5 million, as far as I'm aware. So you know, for the time, I guess it would be a sort of a mid-budget sort of horror film to a degree. But yeah, it's very, very gooey effects, and there's lots of them, and lots of different permeations of different sorts of reactions and things, and monsters and things from beyond, which I think gives you some real kind of fun practical VFX, because this is obviously before sort of CGI and stuff. I have to say, I thought the character work, I mean, Jeffrey Combs is always kind of watchable. He can be a little over the top at times, I would say, but I still think at least I feel our characters are well defined. I especially liked Ken Foree's cop, actually, who is kind of almost more the everyman, I suppose, and to be fair, the one who is able to maybe have more control over himself compared to like Barbara Crampton's character, or that of Crawford, our main character. So you know, I kind of quite liked his kind of sequences. They're all kind of like, as I say, a little bit quite grounded in reality, and he's got quite a fun sort of character with him. I mean, the story is interesting, and they actually took advice from the medical professionals to try and at least keep the kind of the science fiction stuff at least as much based in reality and actual kind of science as possible when you're dealing with you know, science fiction, horror and stuff like that, and in regards to trying to have a believable story as possible. And you know, there are quite a few sequences that are in, you know, a hospital or dealing with kind of medical jargon and things like that, so that you do get a sense of they're taking this kind of idea very kind of seriously. And obviously fans of H.P. Lovecraft, you know, you'll be pleased here. Obviously Stuart Gordon, Jeffrey Combs, they love a bit of H.P. Lovecraft, and they've done many adaptations between the two of them over the kind of the years. And yeah, this one, I generally speaking, I think is held in kind of high regard. It's a very, even though it's a kind of splattery, gooey monster movie, there is a degree of intelligence, I would say, behind it. So, you know, there's that. So let's talk about what doesn't work. Now, I'm going to say this, and this might be controversial. Even though I think this movie is generally held in fairly high regard, I'm maybe not as a big a fan of it as some. I don't think it's a bad film, but I don't think it's one of the greats in my opinion. The reason for that, I think, is primarily the script. Now, the H.P. Lovecraft story that this was based on was a short story, 7 pages long. So not a huge, you know, amount to draw on in regards for, you know, adapting a story. And as such, I think the script is relatively weak, because I feel the characters are written to be, you know, just the whole premise, I think, is a little flawed in regards to kind of logic. You know, they arrest Crawford at the beginning because they think he's, you know, he's a murderer, but they haven't like confiscated the machines or anything like that. And then we kind of go back and we kind of turn the Resonator on again, and then it kind of goes on, you know, they try to destroy it and it turns on again. They try to destroy it and it turns on again. I think the movie isn't particularly clever in regards to its script. I think it's kind of stretching out the 7-page story from H.P. Lovecraft into a somewhat generic story, really, that I think is not particularly kind of inspired. Now, I don't think it's bad. Let me just kind of say that, because I know I'm probably going to be critiqued for this, but I just don't think it's particularly great. It's just sort of mediocre, if you ask me. The script is nothing special. I think the characters sometimes seem illogical, and I know that we are dealing with a literal mind-expanding machine here, but nonetheless, even so, you have to think there's a degree of just throwing away any kind of caution in regards to our sort of characters and what they're kind of wanting to do. And maybe you can kind of get away with one person, but it just seems like Barbara Crampton's character, who's never really been involved prior to, you know, meeting Jeffrey Combs' character, just seems to then become sort of obsessed with it. There's no, you know, I just think some of the character work here is a little weak, as well as the actual script in regards to the kind of the narrative. VFX very impressive. They haven't held up quite as well as like The Thing, which is the movie this is sometimes kind of compared to. They are still impressive, but these days, obviously, I think you can kind of see the difference in sort of production value in regards to, say, this and movies like maybe The Thing and stuff like that. So yeah, it's still very impressive, but not quite as good a production value as those kind of movies. And I think it's an unfair comparison to be honest with you. So overall, I gotta say, I think the story is probably the weaker part here. Even though I think some of the effects have aged a little poorly, you know, that they still, for 1986, is really what you've got to judge on. They're still kind of quite impressive. But overall, I think the story is the kind of maybe the weaker element. Some of the character work, I think, is the weaker element. It's a little bit over the top at times. And the performances are, you know, they're okay, but they're just a little bit over the top. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's not a bad film, and in fact, I'd say it's probably a slightly above average movie if you're looking at the pantheon of horror sci-fi. But I don't think it's a classic. So there you go. Controversial. 6 out of 10, as they say. What are your thoughts from this movie? Please do let me know, and I shall see you next time. Bye for now.